We've all been there. It's 3 a.m., you're staring at the ceiling, and your brain decides to replay a slightly awkward comment you made at a party 5 years ago. Or maybe you're carrying around a heavy, quiet guilt over a secret mistake no one else even noticed. In a clinical setting, we tend to look at these crushing feelings as problems to be fixed, mental glitches. But if you look at them through the lens of evolutionary biology, you have to ask a much stranger question. Why did we evolve to feel this kind of social pain in the first place? To understand why, we have to look at the relentless logic of natural selection. Evolution is a cold, emotionless process. It is strictly designed to optimize organisms for one thing: surviving long enough to pass on their own genetic code. In 1976, biologist Richard Dawkins published The Selfish Gene, sparking a massive intellectual firestorm. The core argument was deeply unsettling. Our brains were shaped to make us behave in the interests of our genetic survival. Under this theory, even our highest moral ideals and altruistic urges might just be complex manipulations by our genes to ensure their own future. This belief can be a social corrosive. In one study, economist Robert Frank found that simply taking an economics class, where students were taught that humans are naturally self-interested, actually decreased their willingness to donate blood or contribute to public radio. When we convince ourselves we are selected for selfishness, life quickly starts to feel more lonely and brutal. Curious, which brings us to a paradox. If evolution is driven entirely by the survival of selfish genes, how is love even possible? Why did humans become a species capable of such devastating social pain, genuine goodness, and self-sacrifice? Biologists initially solved part of this puzzle with kin selection. Organisms help their relatives because they share the exact same genetic code. Take a dense grove of aspen trees like this one. They flourish in tight groups without competing for sunlight because they are all genetically identical clones. Helping the grove helps their own genes. This diagram represents a game theory model called the prisoner's dilemma, which explains how non-relatives trade favors for mutual benefit. When two people cooperate, they both win, building friendship and trust over time. But if one person defects while the other cooperates, the result is suspicion and anger. Play this game over and over, and the best strategy becomes tit for tat, doing exactly what the other person did on the previous turn. This maximizes your benefits when you meet a cooperator, and immediately protects you from getting exploited by a defector. These mathematical models are brilliant, but they have a fatal blind spot. They completely fail to account for people who lie awake feeling terrible about a victimless mistake, or those who make massive, life-altering sacrifices for strangers with zero expectation of a reward. Kin selection and reciprocity are great for explaining the biology of a transaction, but they fall short of explaining our deep, seemingly irrational capacity for emotional commitment and genuine moral behavior. Understanding the depth of human morality requires looking past simple favor trading. In our ancestral environment, survival depended on being chosen as a partner by the most capable and generous individuals in the group. To get chosen, you have to prove your worth. In biology, this leads to costly signaling. A peacock grows an incredibly expensive, highly visible tail to prove he has the resources and health to sustain it. Because it is so costly, it serves as an honest, undeniable signal of his quality as a mate. Wild turkeys do the exact same thing, fanning out their tail feathers in a display that looks pretty silly to us. Yet humans spend enormous amounts of energy doing our own versions of this. We curate elaborate hobbies, buy expensive cars, and show off our specialized knowledge to prove we are desirable social partners. Over thousands of generations, we essentially domesticated ourselves. We consistently chose partners and friends who were honest, kind, and generous. That selective pressure created a biological runaway phase, hardwiring our brains with the capacity for intense moral passions. That brings us right back to the 3 a.m. ceiling stare. Our constant concern about what others think of us is an internal sensor. It is constantly monitoring our self-esteem to ensure we maintain our value in the eyes of our social group. This constant concern for our reputation acts as a biological, invisible hand. We evolved to be highly sensitive to social feedback because those who ignored these signals were cast out of the group, and in the ancestral world, being cast out meant perishing. This brings us to the heaviest, most painful social emotion of all, grief. The sheer exhaustion and disability of grief can be so devastating that you have to wonder if it's just a tragic biological flaw. Is the pain of loss just a useless side effect that natural selection couldn't engineer out of love? This chart maps the data from the Changing Lives of Older Couples project, the world's largest prospective study of bereavement. Researchers interviewed thousands of people while their spouses were still alive, and then followed up with the survivors at specific intervals, 6, 18, and 48 months after their loss. The data completely defied traditional psychiatric assumptions. Intensely focusing on grief work wasn't always required for recovery. Even more surprising, people who had highly ambivalent, conflicted relationships prior to the loss actually experienced less grief. In our ancestral past, when someone went missing, the intense distress of loss forced individuals to search relentlessly for them. Today, even when a search is impossible, that built-in tendency remains. The pain drives a need to blame, to figure out what happened, and to dedicate immense energy into preventing a repetition of that loss, creating powerful community initiatives in the process. Medicating away our capacity for guilt or social anxiety might provide temporary comfort, but it would simultaneously erode the biological foundation of trust. Without these aversive signals, the internal guardrails that guide our moral behavior would effectively disappear. These painful emotions represent the cost of entry for a species capable of deep, enduring love and genuine goodness. They are the price we pay for the ability to form the bonds that make our lives meaningful.